Good afternoon, friends. My name is Leela Ramdeen. I am the chair of the Greater Caribbean for Life. I also wear a number of other hats. But the GCL, Greater Caribbean for Life, is one that I'm passionate about. It's a not-for-profit civil society organization incorporated under the laws of Puerto Rico. And our mantra is, stop crime, not lives. GCL's main aim is to campaign for and work towards the permanent abolition of the death penalty in the Greater Caribbean and to support Caribbean abolitionist activities and organizations in the region. GCL is the only organization in the region that is devoted to working on the abolition of the death penalty and has been active in raising awareness of the issues surrounding the death penalty since its establishment in 2013 following a conference in Trinidad and Tobago, which was attended by abolitionists from about 12 Greater Caribbean countries as well as abolitionists from further afield. Let me state at the outset that GCL believes that society does have a right to protect itself from persons who commit heinous crimes, and offenders must be held accountable. However, we believe that non-lethal means are sufficient to defend and protect society from offenders. So while we condemn the rise of violent crime in our region and express solidarity with the victims of crime, members of GCL reject the notion that capital punishment will act as a deterrent or foster respect for life in our communities. GCL is committed to promoting peace, respect for life, and good neighborliness as appropriate methods of reducing crime in the Greater Caribbean region. This provides a more durable and effective solution than taking life. GCL faces many challenges in seeking to achieve our goals. For example, although our island states are small, in the English-speaking Caribbean, for instance, there are 13 retentionist countries, and these countries comprise 25% of the votes at the UN General Assembly's sessions to adopt a resolution to establish a moratorium on the use of the death penalty. They have consistently either abstained or voted against the establishment of a moratorium. And yet the last hanging took place in our English-speaking region in 2008, when on the 19th of December 2008, Charles Laplace was hanged in St. Kitts and Nevis. One would have thought that after the horrors of slavery and indentureship in the region, the thought of hanging would be anathema to us. But as Sir Sridhar Ramphal said in another context, we keep loitering on the doorstep of colonialism. The last hangings in the English-speaking Caribbean are as follows. 40 years ago, in 1978, Grenada. In Barbados, 1984. Dominica, 1986. Jamaica, 1988. Antigua and Barbuda, 1999. St. Lucia, 1995. St. Vincent and the Grenadines, 1995. Guyana, 1997. Trinidad and Tobago, 1999. Bahamas, 2000. Cuba, 2003, and of course, as I said, 2008, Charles Laplace in St. Kitts and Nevis. My meeting with a former Attorney General in Trinidad and Tobago a few years ago shows that there is no chink in the armor yet. He said that the Attorney General in the region had a meeting and they had agreed not to get rid or to change the legislation in relation to the death penalty. But you know, there's an old saying, time is longer than twine. Well, this too will pass. We know that we must keep our eyes on our goals and strive to build a strong, resilient platform to sustain the abolitionist movement. We will stay focused. Lack of political will, indeed, linked to fears of losing support in elections at election time, is also another challenge. For example, a few years ago, I wrote a letter to every MP and senator in our parliament in Trinidad and Tobago about, asking for support to abolish the death penalty. I was contacted by at least 4 of these persons who wrote to me or rang me supporting this initiative and supporting my stance. However, each one made it clear that if I was to say anything in public, they would deny that they ever said that. So we know that once Barbados removes the mandatory death penalty, then Trinidad and Tobago will remain the only country in the region with the mandatory death penalty. What we need are courageous, effective leaders who will be prepared to lift their heads above the parapet and strike down the death penalty. There is clear evidence in countries such as the UK that abolished the death penalty, even though the population supported maintaining it in their criminal codes. Fear of crime is another factor that presents a challenge to Greater Caribbean for Life. Our strategy is to raise awareness of the hopelessness of being so afraid that we keep focusing on the symptoms of crime and not the root causes. This requires education, and we must use every opportunity to educate the populace in schools, universities, through seminars, conferences, and symposia. And we know that it's a long process, but then we know that changing hearts and minds will take a long time. But we are in it for the long haul. Part of the education process involves raising awareness of the effectiveness of the death penalty as a deterrent or as a strategy for building a just, harmonious society. The work of Roger Hood and Florence Simangal, commissioned by the London-based Death Penalty Project, is represented at your conference today, is important. One of Hood's studies demonstrated that over 50% of respondents were poorly informed about capital punishment, and 59% claimed they were unaware it was mandatory in Trinidad and Tobago. GCL uses every opportunity to share the results of relevant studies and surveys, such as those by Hood and Simangal, to further our cause. Reports such as the UNDP 2012 report, Human Development and the Shift to Better Citizen Security, are useful. 7 countries were selected for this research in order to represent variations in geography, population size, level of development, and the degree and character of the problem of insecurity. The selected countries for this study were Antigua and Barbuda, Barbados, Guyana, Jamaica, St. Lucia, Suriname, and Trinidad and Tobago. The report rightly states, and this is important, that these countries need a better balance between legitimate law enforcement and prevention, with an emphasis on prevention and more investment, for example, in youth development, job creation, and reducing poverty and socioeconomic inequity. These strategies can contribute to a safer and more democratic and just society in the region. Where are our prevention strategies? The 2012 UNDP report shows that for every dollar spent on crime, for instance in Trinidad and Tobago, only 15 cents was spent on prevention. Effective prevention strategies require good governance. Sadly, in many of our countries in our region, there is a need to strengthen our institutions, the judiciary, police service, public service, etc. For example, the Attorney General in Trinidad and Tobago has said that currently there are 33 persons on death row, 11 of whom fall within the 5-year limit based on the Pratt and Morgan ruling. This means that the sentences of these 11 persons will be commuted to life. In 2016, the AG said there are 2,300 individuals incarcerated on remand, of which 1,000 are facing murder charges. Since the wheels of justice, criminal justice system in Trinidad and Tobago grind slowly, many have been waiting on their trial for years because of the huge backlog of cases. Many more on the loose because our detection rate is abysmally low. As Trinidad and Tobago's Chief Justice Iva Archie has said, social scientists suggest that the certainty of conviction and within a reasonably quick time is a more potent factor than executions. Saul would have referred to the series of Privy Council judicial decisions that limit the application of the death penalty in our region, especially the rulings against any execution after a long delay and imposing greater transparency on clemency and pardon procedures and the introduction of principles in sentencing. As Parvez Jabbar of the Death Penalty Project said some time ago, progress through the courts has reached its limits because abolishing the death penalty is, at the end of the day, a political issue. In our region, we continue to address the symptoms of crime, as I said, and not the root causes. What are we doing to strengthen family life, to get rid of the drugs and guns in our countries, to eliminate violence in our schools, to promote restorative justice and a culture of non-violence, respect for self and others, character development, to speed up prison reform and rehabilitation processes? Carmelo Campos Cruz, who is GCL's deputy, and we attended a hearing. We had an opportunity to speak at a hearing of the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights in Washington in March 2015. And we said, while the crime rate remains high in many of the countries in the region, inadequacies in law enforcement and preventive measures hinder progress. There is a need for all countries in the region to strengthen their criminal justice systems, for example, by improving their law enforcement agencies, their detection and conviction rates, their forensic capabilities, and court facilities, which may serve to improve efficiency and processing of cases, dealing with inordinate delays in the system due, for example, to court backlogs and high caseload, developing and implementing effective witness protection programs, and dealing with incompetence and corruption, for example, in some police forces. In an interview in June 2018, this year, economist Mala Dukaran highlighted some of the challenges that stand as obstacles in the path of crime reduction. Focusing on Trinidad and Tobago, she said, Trinidad and Tobago can no longer ignore the rising cost of crime, which continues to increase despite rising expenditure by state agencies in a bid to tackle it. It is clear, she said, that taxpayers are not getting value for money as the funds being put into crime fighting are not bringing results. She referred to a 2017 report by the Inter-American Development Bank called The Costs of Crime and Violence, New Evidence and Insights in Latin America and the Caribbean, which looked at crime in the Caribbean and Latin American region. At the time of the study, she said, Trinidad and Tobago spent more money on crime than any other country in the Caribbean and Latin American region, but had the lowest detection rate. The IDB said public expenditure on crime per capita in Trinidad and Tobago is at 460 US 60 cents per capita per annum, which is more than double the regional average of US $194.50. She added that the percentage of businesses that spent money on security is also the highest in the region in Trinidad and Tobago, 85% of businesses. The staggering drop in the detection rate was shown from an average of 64.8% murder detection rate from 1990 to 1999. It plummeted to 13% by 2013, and a few years ago it was 10%. This means that although Trinidad and Tobago has the highest spend per capita on crime in the region, she said, it has the lowest detection rate. Another challenge is finding effective ways of recruiting the media in a more meaningful way to partner with the Greater Caribbean for Life in the process of working towards abolition. The media is not sufficiently engaged in issues concerning the death penalty. Media releases and invitations to the media to cover events are not enough. GCL is seeking to build alliances with particular journalists and media houses in the region to support our work. The media could and must do more than reporting crime in a sensational way. There is a need for media houses to commit to examining death penalty policies from a critical perspective and to educate the public as part of the process of seeking to change hearts and minds. There is a need for us abolitionists to use all forms of media in our struggle. But I must say that at times we need to put on our armor of steel in the face of verbal attacks by some retentionists, even among adherents of our own faith. On one occasion, while stating my position on the death penalty on a radio program, a caller remonstrated with me angrily, saying, Leela Ramdeen, I am Catholic, and I say hang them high in the public square and sell tickets too. Such statements, of course, come with the territory. And by the way, in case you haven't heard, in August this year, the Catholic Church finally revised paragraph 2267 of its catechism, making it clear that the death penalty is, as the Pope says, it's inadmissible because it is an attack on the inviolability and dignity of the person. The words in the revised paragraph also states that the Church works with determination for the abolition of the death penalty worldwide. Pope Francis made it clear that the commandment, you shall not kill, has absolute value and applies both to the innocent and to the guilty. While I'm on the topic of religion, another challenge we face in the region is the rapid growth of members of the evangelical and Pentecostal Christian faith communities. They focus on the Old Testament principle of lex talionis, the law of retaliation, the principle of retributive justice as expressed in the phrase an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, taken from Exodus 21:23 to 27. On one occasion, I spent more than 3 hours on a religious TV program in Trinidad and Tobago trying to convince some pastors from these Christian denominations that we need to look beyond the New Testament to find answers to our 21st century problems. Jesus said in the New Testament in Matthew 5, verses 38 to 40, you have heard it said an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, but I tell you, do not meet evil with evil. Examples as to how Jesus dealt with the issue with the woman caught in adultery, and even how God treated Cain in the Old Testament after he killed his brother Abel, didn't sway them. There are a number of other faith communities that also support the death penalty in the region, and their beliefs also present a challenge to us. For example, Hindus believe in the law of karma, and most believe that one must expiate one's sin in this lifetime in order to reincarnate as a higher being. In spite of these challenges, we have to keep carrying on. GCL recognizes that in order to be more effective, we need to partner with other abolitionists. We have embarked on a 3-year European Union funded project, which includes 5 partners. The lead partner in this process is the Death Penalty Project. Saul can give you more information. They're the lead applicant on the project. Other partners include the World Coalition Against the Death Penalty, St. Vincent and the Grenadines Human Rights Association, UE, the University of the West Indies Cave Hill campus in Barbados, and of course Greater Caribbean for Life. Together we will seek to build a platform for death penalty reform leading to abolition, raising awareness of the death penalty as a human rights issue, and strengthening the anti-death penalty movement in Barbados and the Eastern Caribbean states, which are Antigua and Barbuda, Barbados, Dominica, Grenada, St. Kitts, Nevis, St. Lucia, and St. Vincent and the Grenadines. This project will help us to address some of the challenges we face in the region. The project has 4 main strands of work. We'll be creating tools on the death penalty, for example, policy briefs on key issues, creating information packs and mobilization kits on the death penalty, and regional newsletters. The second strand will be focusing on advocacy for reform of the death penalty, and would include expert delegation visits, engaging with members of parliament, students, the general public, professional bodies such as bar associations, and other key policymakers and stakeholders. Participation in the Universal Periodic Review process is important, and in January 2014, GCL established a partnership with the Caribbean Institute for Human Rights and the International Human Rights Clinic of the Inter-American University of Puerto Rico, with the aim of jointly preparing shadow reports on the death penalty for submission to the UPR process of the UN Human Rights Council, and we've produced quite a number of reports. The project will be involved in conducting an education and awareness-raising campaign, for example, speaking and outreach tours. Speakers will include former death row prisoners, exonerees, victims, families, and civil society activists, film and documentary screenings, mobilization kits provided to students, faith-based organizations, and other civil society organizations to raise awareness and encourage debates on the issue. I must state that GCL has conducted 2 speaking tours in 2014 and 2015 to Antigua, Jamaica, St. Lucia, Grenada, Barbados, Bahamas, St. Vincent, St. Kitts, and Guyana. 3 important persons were included on these tours. Rennie Cushin, who is a member of the House of Representatives of the state of New Hampshire in America, and founder and executive director of Murder Victims Families for Human Rights, and also Bill Pelkey, a founder of the organization that leads, that uses the talents and the passion of murder victim family members who are opposed to the death penalty. He's also the author of a book entitled Journey of Hope, From Violence to Healing. We also took with us Juan Melendez on our first tour. He's a Puerto Rican who spent nearly 18 years on death row in Florida for a crime that he did not commit. He was exonerated in 2002. You can access on our website our newsletters, reports on these speaking tours. Now, through collaboration on this project and exchange between international CSOs and Caribbean CSOs, capacity building support and media engagement, the project action will help to strengthen civil society. The project's task of strengthening civil society will involve building capacity in Barbados and the English-speaking Caribbean. But it must be noted that although the project focuses only on Barbados and the English-speaking Caribbean, there will be lessons learned that will inform GCL's work across the region. In conclusion, I recall Archbishop Desmond Tutu saying to us via a video clip when we were at a World Coalition Against the Death Penalty conference in Madrid. He said, "There is no justice in killing in the name of justice, and no godliness in exacting vengeance." And remember the Russian writer Dostoevsky in his book, The Idiot, he said, "Murder by legal sentence is immeasurably more terrible than murder by brigands." There is no place for state-sanctioned executions in the 21st century. As Sir Claire Roberts, a former AG and Minister of Justice and Legal Affairs for Antigua and Barbuda and former member of the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights, said at one of our conferences, he said, "When there is a breakdown in public security, politicians like to use the call, bring back the death penalty. But this is just a quick, cheap fix. Let us reject this quick, cheap fix." I did the quote there. Let us reject that quick, cheap fix and do what is right because it is the right thing to do. If we are committed to promoting human rights, we cannot sit on our laurels and allow the death penalty to exist in criminal codes. We need all hands on deck. To date, 142 countries have abolished the death penalty in law or practice. Let us resolve at this conference to play our part to achieve total abolition in the world. Thank you.